Hey everybody, this is Klaus from Plant Based Ease. Thank you for tuning in. So today we're going to be talking about Joe Rogan because again, he's been speaking about veganism. He seems to have an affinity to this topic even though he's not vegan at all. And I actually caught up last week with Rich Roll, one of the world's fittest vegans, certainly according to Men's Health magazine. And I asked him what he thought about Joe Rogan. Check this out.
My perspective on Joe is first and foremost, like I like Joe, we're friends, I've been on his show twice. And my experience being on his show, both times was great. Like I found him to be curious, I found him to be really interested and non-judgmental about where I was coming from. And I think both times we had great conversations. I think what's interesting about Joe is I will find him to be spontaneously bringing up veganism like all the time in an unprovoked way. So what I take from that is it's in his consciousness on some level.
What were you saying before the podcast started? We were going to bring it up again about veganism. It's a weird world. Well, a lot of vegans would disagree with that. Crazy vegan propaganda. And vegans have this feeling as well. What happened with you with trying vegan? He wrote it. Wow. The guy who wrote it was a vegan. Eating a vegan diet article that was written by a vegan. What about protein when you were being a vegan?
And he's always talking about it, he's always asking his guests about it. I think he is prone to coming down on the side that it's not the way to go, and I find that unfortunate. So he's always looking for the reason to dismiss it. So he had Kip and Keegan from Cowspiracy on the podcast. And they had a great conversation, and I found him to be quite objective and interested and curious during that conversation as well. And then in the aftermath of that, he was told by one of his fans or somebody that they had one of their facts off, and there was a twisting of that fact. It had to do with the amount of acreage required. I don't even remember exactly, and I don't want to be misquoted here. But he sort of hung his hat on that as saying, well, this whole movie is not to be trusted then.
And they were wrong about that too. Yeah. When they came in here, they were talking about how many acres it takes for a cow to graze and all the negative aspects. There's absolutely negative aspects when it comes to animal agriculture. And I think it's super important to be honest about those negative aspects, even when criticizing it. You can't exaggerate it to make your case look better because the actual facts are disturbing enough.
As you can see, Joe Rogan is certainly not a fan of What the Health or Cowspiracy. I actually spoke to the co-director of these films, Keegan Kuhn, last week, and he gives his perspective. Check this out.
Every single thing that is in Cowspiracy is fact-based. We have a literal fact page on our website that has every single statistic with its original study and its original source. You can see, like, this aren't numbers we're making up.
Everyone uses that page.
Right?
I don't know if you're aware, like, everyone uses that's a great page.
Well, because it's a resource.
And it's a resource for when we plant-based want to make memes. It's a resource for when people are skeptical about the environmental argument. You can see the number of shares it's got. I guess it resets after a few months, but it's always like 50,000 or something, you know?
Yeah, so we did the exact same thing with What the Health as well. We did have a fact page, so you can see the original source. But it's funny, Joe Rogan, I was just talking to Rich Roll about this as well. And Rich said, he goes, you know what? He goes, Joe brings up veganism more often than I do. And it's true, like he brings up veganism all the time. Even though it's negative, he's still talking about it. And I see that as a positive. I think anytime we're bringing up the subject, it creates some sort of dialogue and it makes people question it at least a little bit. And whether, again, if they're totally against it, they're at least going to be thinking about it. And that, I think, is a huge, powerful thing. So I'm super grateful for Joe Rogan. He's bashed What the Health, calls us liars. They tell lies. Again, everything's fact-based, so I don't know where he's saying we're making up lies when we have source material. But again, I'm thankful to him because he's bringing more attention to the films.
I find it really interesting. I guess his heart is set on, he really thinks the low-carb, the ketogenic diet is the optimal diet for human health. But then, on the opposite side, he's seeing these films talking about the beneficial effects of a healthy, low-fat, plant-based diet that are doing really well. And so in his mind, he can't understand why that is. And I think that's the source of his kind of interest in it.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's going on in his head, but I think he's a deep, thoughtful person, and he does think about these things. Everyone has their own biases, obviously, but I also think the fact that he is so challenged by a vegan message in these films, it speaks to something deeper, and I'm excited to see where Joe Rogan's going to go with his whole mission and his whole journey, because, I mean, Kip says it all the time. The proof is going to be coming out in the next few years. There's a lot of debate about, low fat, high carb, high fat, low carb, there's just back and forth. But we're going to see in the next 10, 15 years the rates of heart disease and cancer and diabetes and hypertension in these two different diet groups. And we're going to see, okay, well, what's the best diet for human health? And I don't wish chronic disease on anybody, but if people are eating a debilitating diet, they're going to have debilitating diseases. And I think that's where there's not going to be a debate anymore. It's going to be very clear cut.
I think if Kip or Keegan had explained it to him in a different way, he might not have come away thinking that. So, we'll see. I mean, I applaud him for having people like me on. He could be just like, I'm not interested in these people. So I respect him for that. And, I think time will tell with Joe. We'll see, But, it's like Joe is...
He's a great guy, right?
He's cool. Like, and, he's very conscious of the ills of factory farming. He's very conscious of all of the terrible treatment of these animals. I find him to be sensitive to that. And, he's a hunter, so he's going to go and he eats the meat that he hunts, and that's his choice, and that's a choice I wouldn't make. But I think he's probably living more sustainably and in a way that's a little less cruel than the average sort of unsuspecting consumer who's just buying, meat at the grocery store every week.
Right. Like, especially factory farming when it comes to like cows and shit and pigs. It's disturbing to see them all stacked up in there like that. It's disturbing to see those rivers of shit where people run these pig farms, and the shit comes. I mean, they filmed it with a drone at one of these giant commercial places. It's fucking disturbing, and that is straight up.
That's
fact.
enough. That's enough.
There's a ton of actual facts that are disturbing.
It's super great that Joe sees the massive problems with factory farming, but it's a shame that he doesn't extend that to like other forms of slaughter, for example, like his hunting. And one area that him and Rich certainly disagree on is the ketogenic diet.
The ketogenic diet, it's undeniably popular at the moment, and it's sort of just come onto the scene in a mainstream way. But what's interesting is observing how many people who are former kind of paleo people have adopted this ketogenic approach to their diet. And I find that curious because the paleo movement has its roots in sort of ancestral living, like how do we live more like cavemen, for a lack of a better phrase. How do we live more in alignment with the rhythms of the planet and nature? And what's odd is that, to me, eating a ketogenic diet seems to be in contradiction with that fundamental edict. So I think it's weird and bizarre that so many people are sort of jumping on board with this. And I think it has something to do with the fact that we're conflating wellness or health with weight loss, because I think there's copious evidence to suggest that adopting a ketogenic diet will result in weight loss. But beyond that, in terms of the long-term impact of eating that way, we still have studies that need to be conducted. But I can't help but believe that eating tremendous amounts of animal products, animal protein, and saturated fat is going to have a significant detrimental impact on people's health, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So in all of the people that I've had on my podcast, doctors, nutritionists, and the like, they've pretty unanimously indicated that this is not a healthy way to live your life.
Joe's also an advocate for grass-fed meat, which he thinks is more sustainable. The
idea that eating, there's a lot of confusion about grass-fed and all of this, and this idea that these animals are having amazing lives. Just set aside the fact that that's just patently untrue. If we were to create enough grazing land to truly, sort of raise these animals grass-fed, we just don't have enough land to do it, and it would require just a tremendous amount of water, and it's not a sustainable solution for the planet.
So regardless of where you stand on the debate, one could argue that there's a lot of common ground between both arguments, but let me know in the comments down below what you think.
Yeah, what are the biggest battles that we're fighting that we can all agree on? I mean, we can quibble about these tiny metrics within our respective, dietary fiefdoms, but I think we can all agree that factory farming is something that, we need to overcome. Factory farming is a plague on our culture. And my hope is that 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, people will look back on that and think, how could we possibly, do that to these animals? And I think wherever you fall, with respect to your dietary proclivities, That's something I think we can all unite on and agree on. I think we can all unite and agree on the fact that people are eating too much sugar and processed crap. And I think that is an important thing for people who are part of the vegan movement to understand as well. There's a difference between, it's never been easier to eat an unhealthy vegan diet because there's so many amazing products now. Here in Los Angeles, you go to the store and there's all kinds of incredibly delicious vegan desserts and a tremendous number of meat analogs and dairy analogs, some of which are less healthy than others. And I think these are all great and they have their place, but don't be confused. It's very easy that to suddenly become unhealthy because all the foods that you're eating, albeit vegan, are processed foods that are moving you in a direction away from the optimal health that you're seeking.
So that was it. Thank you so much for watching. If you're wondering what this stuff is, it's not actually there. It's a green screen thanks to Sean Lee, who runs The Last Vegan Show. I was actually on it and it's going to be out in the next 2 weeks, I think. So we talk about like plant-based news, what he's doing. It's really, really cool. I'll link his channel down below because it's going to be out in a week or two. Check it out. Be there or be square. And until next time, see you soon. Peace out.